Hi, Vladimir. Hi, class. Thanks a lot for attending today to the video conference. And for those who are not present today, we will send the recording afterwards. So today we are starting with the cycle of industry specialized conferences in marketing. And today we have with us Francois Bazini, sharing with you a lot of insights and valuable information and experiences about private label brands in the food and beverage industry. So whenever you're ready, Francois, switch on your camera and microphone and let's get started.
All right. Can you all hear me very well? Because I think I have switched on everything. So good morning to you all. So as Irene said, my name is Francois Bazini. It's nice to meet you all virtually. This is my first online class, so it's very exciting. As you can tell by my accent, I'm from Paris. I lived in France for many years, but my job also took me to Toronto in Canada, to London in the UK, New York, as I work for Pepsi, and for the past year or so to Madrid, Spain. So I'm going to talk to you about a long-lasting, but always very relevant, very hot topic for the marketing community, which is how to survive what people think is the ineluctable rise of private label. So what I'm going to talk to you about is what precisely mainstream brands caught between premium brands and private label brands. What can they do to defend themselves and to survive? Especially when the private label brands are very aggressive from a price point of view, and not only from a price point of view, and when the more premium brands are also very aggressive, spending a lot of money in advertising and promotion. So this document is really, I am not an academic, so this document is really intended to be a conversation starter, or more or less sharing experience with you. By no means a set of recommendation. However, it is based on some pretty robust data. One of the data points is a Boston Consulting Group project that I conducted when I was at BCG, for which was Mars, snack food company, and Mars, had the question of how can we effectively defend our brand against the rise of private label. So at the time we looked at their entire industry of packaged goods to really find out what was successful, what was not successful, and what were the possible brands could pull themselves against private label. And also I have done some academic research, and there are some good publications out there from McKinsey Quarterly, Harvard Business Review. BCG publishes, from time to time some insights on how to find, and also in here a lot of what I think are from the company I've seen, Tropicana, L'Oreal, and the others. So first of all, before I go too far, I want to share a bit more, so you understand why I'm level. I started my career with Group Danone in for 5 years and then I moved back and I for 4 years Boston Consulting Group, strategy consultants, clients Philips Consumer Electronics. I work for Air France. I work for Louis Vuitton in the luxury, and many others. And then I went to the real world, if you will, for all of 9 years. First, and one of the main is to London, and I was between PepsiCo that managed the brand based of London, and then 3 years at PepsiCo. I was the senior director for global innovation for the group based out of New York in the US. And after those 9 years at PepsiCo, I've moved back to Europe, and I am now the vice president marketing for the international region, which is the entire world, the US, for a company called So. It is the third largest company in the world, with presence all over the world. Like Jim Beam, teachers called Lafroig, Mark, again a lot of Japanese Clario Sodic. Agenda for today is, but what is, first of all, we're trying to define what is quiz. Try to understand deeper does this threat of private label play, and why are some categories or some brand doing a better job than others at fighting back or resisting against private labels. Third, we will have a quick page or two on why there is hope to escape that big squeeze. Because when you talk, it's incredible when you talk in marketing or in business to some colleagues, the belief is that there is not much you can do except cut prices, which is for me absolutely not the case. There are many levers you can action, but I want to start by showing that there are some fundamental reasons why there is hope, and then going to a next section showing what are the lessons we can draw from experience. What are the levers that brands and manufacturers can pull to defend efficiently against private label? Now, some very concrete examples for each of the levers. And finally, we will bring looking at an example, or a counter example, should I say, with Lipton iced tea. So if we start, what is a very simply, I think you're very familiar with that worldwide consumer phenomenon, which is that consumers now tend to either trade up or trade down, and they are squeezing the middle of many markets. You see that in airlines, in pet food, in sports goods, in almost anything. Consumers are trading up because they are attracted by truly superior set of products, and that also spend a lot of money in advertising and communications. But they're also attracted by trading down by brands that are improving their quality offering, that are very aggressive in terms of price, and that also offer a kind of no frills offering. So consumers either trade up or trade down, trading up to brands that have more money than your typical mainstream brands, or trade down to brands that have the power of retailers, and in the middle, our poor mainstream brands are squeezed, if you will. Just two examples that I want to give you from Spain, for brands I worked on. Beam Suntory has a brand in Spain called Larios Gin, and Larios is a brand that is being squeezed in the middle. At the top end of the gin market, there is a huge growth and proliferation of gins. Spanish people are crazy about gin and tonics. From niche or from famous brands like Bombay Sapphire, Hendrix, that do spend a lot of money. And also, because there is a recession in Spain, or there was a recession in Spain, there is a lot of demand for private label. So Larios is being squeezed between those two, and although it's a leading brand, it has 29% market share, it is suffering a lot. Another example from Spain is Whiskey Dick, which again is suffering from private label market share gains, and some more premium brands like Johnny Walker, Ballantine's, that invest a lot of money, and in between, poor Whiskey Dick is squeezed. So that's a phenomenon you see a lot in many categories and in most markets of the world. So let's look at the threat itself, why it's happening, and why some brands and categories are doing better. So the first thing to understand is that retailers, first of all, have the ability to succeed when they do private label brands. They have the scale, sufficient to do private label brands very well. If you take some retailers, let's say in France, a group like Carrefour, they have close to 22-23% market share. In some categories, they have up to 80% market share with their private label. That's the case, for example, in juices. When you multiply just 20% market share of Carrefour by 80% share of private label, you find that Carrefour, although it only distributes private label juice brands at Carrefour, they have a very decent size of the juice market. So they can really play as competitors, even on a national basis. And also, as you all probably know, private label brands have very low marketing costs. They don't pay listing fees, they don't need to advertise that much, they don't need to pay huge trade terms, and for a typical fast-moving consumer good brand, the margin that you give to the retailer is between 30 and 40%. They don't have that, so they can create great products without incurring so much marketing cost. The other thing that is important to understand is that retailers have the incentive to win in private label, because for them it's a unique opportunity to reduce the basket price of consumers. The more consumer buy private label, the more the overall price impression they get from the retailer is low. It's also a way for them to differentiate from other retailers beyond price. If you take a retailer like Loblaws in Canada, They have an incredible range of private label that makes them truly unique in the marketplace, and consumers go to Loblaws for private label offering. And lastly, private label retailers higher margin, which is amazing. So when you list all those things, and you know that they have the ability to win, well, guess what? They are pushing very hard on their private label offering. So, having said that, not equal. Some categories are more victim of private labels, and there are some structural factors that play there. One, for example, is that in a market where you have concentrated retailers, like let's say the UK or Canada or France to a lesser extent, then private label tend to succeed much more than in markets like the US, where you have a higher fragmentation. When you have low consumer involvement in the category, for example, toilet paper, tissue, wheat, aluminum foil, those categories don't have a lot of consumer involvement, and therefore private label tend to proliferate. When you have weak brands or fragmented categories, I mentioned a few minutes ago the example of juices. In shelf-stable juices in many markets, you have so many brands that is very fragmented. And what happens when the category is fragmented? Well, big private label players tend to dominate and gain share. Also, a consequence of having small brands and fragmented category is that the manufacturers have a low advertising spend, which again, when brands don't advertise, there is a very direct correlation with the market share of private label. Also, private label tend to succeed in categories or against brands that don't have a superior quality. If you're not able to demonstrate a product superiority to consumers, very quickly they will understand that there is no added value in your brand, and they will trade down to private label. When with no meaningful, so some charge more for brand. In fact, the brand differentiation is not that. Guess what? Again, consumers figure it out. They have no fear to buy product. What we noticed when we did a lot of analysis was that in category innovation rates, private label again tend to when there is a weak, meaning you don't have a manufacturer, the leader of the category captain, retailer on how to the merchandising there. And private labels thrive. When you're in categories that have out-of-home channel, you buy not say for spirits or for juices or for at barbershops. When you don't have a high share of out-of-home channel, then again you are exposed and they tend to grow and dominate. But there are some categories where private label don't do. When you don't have, like in the US, when you have high consumer involvement, let's say baby products, shampoos, when you are well positioned, concentrated like coffee, when you have advertising players like Coke and Pepsi, there is a lot true superior brand. If you take example, retailer to create tweaks or bounce, for example. In those cases, private label don't do well. When you have clear-cut brand differentiation, when you have a high rate of innovation, very importantly, when you have, as I mentioned, the presence of strong category captains and a high share of out-of-home channels, in those cases, private label don't do that well, and manufacturers can resist. There are also some elements that allow brands to resist very well. Technology on one hand, brand on the other. Technology, when you have a true product technology that is proprietary, very hard to match. For example, it's impossible to replicate the Mars bar at anything than twice the cost. A private label manufacturer cannot make it as good for the same price. There's a real technology in there. When there is an out-of-home presence, so I mentioned spirits, but it's true for Coca-Cola, it's true for snacks, it's true for chips. When you have power brands, Nespresso, have high involvement category products, cosmetic foods, or when you have brand with authority, like Weight Watchers or L'Oreal. So now, is there hope to escape that big squeeze? I believe there is. And when I meet people, and I have throughout my career, almost in every, I meet a lot of, let's say, if we are faced with them, there's nothing we can do except lower the price, which is a very bad idea, because what happens when you lower the price, you reduce your margins. Once you have reduced your margins, you have to reduce the marketing spending. Once you have reduced the marketing spending, why would consumer buy you? You don't advertise, you don't innovate, then they would trade down again even more. And retailers can tell you, well, you don't advertise, you don't innovate, on my need you anymore, and then they remove you. and if you know that you don't have a point of advantage, brands. So you may want to and not fight against private premiumization strategy if the main source of your share decline, if your curve is so low that you need to raise your price inevitably, if your equity remains strong and you think you have cards to play against more premium brands, then you can do that. And that happens when you have a clear USP or a clear point of difference. So now that you have your targets, because you have assessed its size and you have decided it has interesting characteristic and you understand that target very well, you want to choose a survey. For me, the most one of the most interesting come across is this one. It tells you that you can't really have one size fit all marketing strategy. Your marketing strategy must be adapted depending on two factors. One is your brand relative market share, which is your share relative. Your premiumness category. Category is very, like, let's say, or if a category is very battle, like, let's say, ketchups. So you have a classic 2x2 matrix. If you are lucky enough to be positioned in the top end of the matrix, in premium categories, where private label are quite low in market share, and if you have a dominant share, let's say you are L'Oreal in shampoos, or you are Häagen-Dazs in ice creams, you want to premiumize. You want to innovate a lot to cover all the possible consumer needs. The SKU proliferation is not a problem because even if you fail, as long as you cover all the needs and consumers are excited, it's okay because you make a lot of money on each SKU. It's premium, so no issues. And you want to invest a lot of advertising money. If you are still in the premium category but you don't have a leadership share, you want to have a focus strategy. Almost the same strategy with high innovation, high marketing spend, but very niche. Think about Neutrogena. Neutrogena is not a big brand of cosmetics, but it's a premium category. So what they have done is very simple. They have decided to select two things. So it's dandruffs when it comes to hair care, and it's dry skin when it comes to skin care, and that's all they do. They spend advertising money, they innovate, but only on those two need states. Now, when you are in not so premium categories, which is what we are talking about today, if you're lucky enough to be in a leadership position, think about ketchup Heinz, but in a category that is not a premium category, where there is not, where there is a lot of private label, where the average price point is quite low, you want to have a very different strategy. You want to closely manage the price gaps. You want to have some very effective cost engineering of your product so that you keep your margin as high as possible. You want to make sure you don't fall into the trap of SKU proliferation. You don't want to innovate like crazy at all because innovation failures cost you a lot of money and you don't have a lot of money to spend. You want to innovate towards, for example, convenient products. So Heinz does, caps that are easy, or PET bottles, or large formats. And you want to ensure that the money you spend at store level is more important than the money you spend in advertising, because again, you're not in premium, you want the maximum bang for your buck on your advertising, on your marketing money. So it shapes a very different type of marketing strategy. The mistakes come when you want to apply a charismatic strategy. Let's say you have working for L'Oreal or for Häagen-Dazs, doing lots of TV advertising, and suddenly you get a job at Heinz. You cut and paste the same approach, it's a disaster. To innovate too much, advertise too much, well, what you need to make sure is that you keep your lines simple, your price close to private label, your cost engineer, your product convenience. Big mistake. Or if someone from Heinz is hired at L'Oreal, he will start to reduce the cost on all the products, he will block innovation, he will spend all the money in store, he will do only big formats of shampoo. Again, not smart. So that matrix, I love it so much because it shows you the complexity of marketing and that you cannot have one approach fits all, but you need to, once you have defined your target, be careful about which survival strategy you use. Then you have the levers, and that's the exciting piece. So I split the levers in two categories that are about your offer design. You know, how do you create an offering for consumers that is appealing to them so much that they won't trade down to private? And then how do you commercialize? How do you go about pricing, about merchandising, about out of home, about channel management? So we're going to see levers in those two categories. So the first lever is to ensure that your product or your brand has true product quality. Quality in generic terms, because that's too easy to say. You know, of course you need to have good quality to resist against private label. You want to have a product quality that is important to that precise target of price-sensitive consumers, and that your brand can leverage, and something that is relevant almost only to them. Let me give you an example. In pet food, Mars, you know, there are many ways to do good pet food. You can do great packaging, you can do vitamins, you can add natural products, you can have high meat content, you can do various flavors, many things. Mars identified that the price-sensitive consumers, unlike the rest of consumers, they were sensitive to one thing, which is the amount of meat a product contains, the meat content, which is different from, let's say, the people who are buying premium pet food. They don't care about that so much. But the price-sensitive consumers do. So what they did is that they put some claims on each of their packs that were targeted at private label shoppers, those brands that were squeezed between high-end brands and private label brands like, let's say, Whiskas or Kitty Cat, and they put a high meat content claim, and that helped their sales immensely. Another example of that is Tropicana. Tropicana, when I worked on that brand, I identified that consumers were very sensitive to, and they wanted to understand why to pay more money for Tropicana, which sells sometimes twice as much as a private label. But we also realized that when you explain to consumers that the oranges that Tropicana uses are squeezed in less than 24 hours after they have been harvested, that they are not squeezed as hard as most other brands do. And you know that when you squeeze an orange very hard to get the last drop of juice because you want to lower your costs, what happens is that you get of the orange in the juice, and it tastes very bitter. It's not nice. So the gentle pressing is also something that consumers value. And lastly, you know, they understand that we at Tropicana were able to find the best oranges. So those three claims combined, 24-hour gentle squeezing and best oranges, justified for consumers a higher price. But we tested those claims with those consumers that were tempted to buy private label. We would not have any claims if it was resonating. To innovate on the choice that matters for consumers. Let me give you a counter example, because counter example sometimes. Mark, again, in pet food, to make things simple, 3 tiers. Let's say in cat food, they have the top end, which is Shiba. Shiba is really for those people. Some, it's female that associate their, they more on Sundays or for Valentine's Day. I mean, it goes that far. The brand manager on Shiba innovated a few years ago and introduced a technology of vitamins and minerals that helped make the hair of the cat softer. Shiba sales went like 20%. The brand the brand premium men's. It was a good idea. By the way, doesn't cost much. Like a few vitamins, is very inexpensive, and he thought that he was going to add value to consumers. And he did a little bit. He had some, some vitamins and could claim on his pack that Whiskas now helps keep the hair of your cat bright and shiny. Sales did a little bit, but then they have a thing called Kitty Cat. That is against private label. The brand that people hesitate to buy, and sometimes they buy private label, sometimes they buy Kitty Cats. They hesitate between the two. The Kitty Cat brand manager thought, okay, it seemed to have worked on other brands. This innovation is quite cheap. I'm going to add and formulas as well. Or to make the hair of your cat shiny. Guess what happened? Sales declined by 25%. 25%. What could have happened? Absolutely right. Those consumers, again, those consumers, not all consumers of pet food, but those consumers, the one who who hesitates between kitty cats and private label. When you tell them that your brand is asking them to pay, let's say, 10% more than private label, but they see that it's going to make the cat's hair shinier, they say, oh, that's it? This is what for the hair? Those they want the cat and not, because sometimes cats are different. So they want the meat content. So they want disgusting. And number two, they don't want the cat to die after he has eaten the food. Those are the two things. Good enough so so the cat finishes the and that the cat doesn't die. If you start to tell them that you are charging them 10% more, not because you have more meat, it is safer food, but because it's going to be shiny, you almost unconsciously give them a rationale, justification to trade down and to buy the private label brand. So an innovation or a claim that is not well for the sub-target, people who hesitate um, too bad we don't see the images, they didn't load properly. But on Lipton iced tea, in 2006, it was the whole kind of, we need to make our product healthy. Who is the owner of the brand, or who was the full owner of the brand at that time, decided to embark on a true health and wellness strategy. Because they said, you know what, so, we analyze our business, Lipton iced tea has a reason for being, which is to be healthier than Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and we are going to play really hard of soft drink. Makes sense on paper when you don't do your go deep into the, yeah, why not? So what they did is that they changed the core formula, they reduced the sugar level to reduce the number of calories. They changed the packaging and the graphics from something very bright and yellow to something much more elegant with tea leaves and tea cues, And they pushed a claim that iced tea contains antioxidants. They also, in terms of target and advertising, instead of doing campaigns that were very bright and happy about targeting beach families and kids on beaches with sampling programs and balloons and very uplifting advertising, they went for advertising that was more about balance and harmony. You had a woman in a spa, smelling smelling the fresh air. They targeted women 35-45. They did a big PR campaign with the Green Forest Alliance. Oh, sorry, the Rainforest Alliance. Spelling mistake. And then they innovated. Instead of doing colorful fruit flavors, they went for better for you innovations like white tea, red tea, Linea, which is a product that is supposed to help you in your diet. I stopped when I arrived. They were about to launch a blue tea. And then, so really they went entirely through the line to, this health and wellness strategy. And, I'm using this example because there's a quote from Mark Twain that I absolutely love, which is to say that no man is of so little value that he cannot be used as a bad example. And I think that this example of Lipton iced tea is really an example of bad marketing, of lazy marketing, that falls into the trap of the propaganda that you hear about health and wellness and you need to be healthy. So all the junior brand managers, they run and they do, all those things we've seen on the page before. The mistake they've made, honestly, they've made three types of mistakes. The first one is that they have accepted quality trade-offs on their core Lipton iced tea business. They've changed, by reducing the sugar level, they've changed the taste. And we all know in soft drinks that sweetness matters a lot to consumers. You don't remove sweetness without impacting the quality of the product. So number one, well, we saw, and it was the lever A, that the quality of the product, especially for those people who trade up and down, is very important. So they violated one of the most basic principles. Number two, they misunderstood who the target was. If they had looked a bit more about who the Lipton iced tea target was, and especially that target that was possibly going to go away from Lipton iced tea to private label brands, they would have understood that it was not urban women 25 to 40 trying to reduce their waste. It was large family, suburban, that have very low interest in healthier food, that natural foods, that care much less than the average population about the environment, that watch lots of TV, find it very entertaining, and they are the least likely to read a book. So you get the type of people, right? And they didn't talk to these people. Because these people, if they had spoken to them, they would understand that what they want is full sugar, tasty soft drinks. Very often they give it to their kids. They want taste. They want fruit flavor innovations, not white tea and blue tea. They want to sample the product when they go on vacation, when they go to the mall, when they go to the beach. And they want large formats for the family, or they want small formats sometimes for the kids, but they want formats. So the Unilever is completely misunderstood who the critical sub-target was, and that target needs. And he or she violated some very, very important principles. So guess what happened? It was a disaster. In 2 years, the market share of Lipton iced tea in Europe had shrunk significantly. In some markets, they have lost a lot of consumers. I remember in Western Europe, in France, in Belgium, in Netherlands, they had lost up to half of their consumer base in 2 or 3 years. Needless to say, the tea-based innovation around white tea and green and red tea were complete failures. The equity started to suffer. It suffered especially on dimensions like fun and for me, which in soft drinks are very important. Those are the image dimensions that drive market share. They lost the core attractiveness. You know, the main formulas on Lipton are peach and lemon. Those lost attractiveness compared to private label when you did blind tests. And lastly, a bit like the example of Kitty Cat with the shiny hair of the cat, the claims around antioxidants, the tea content, and the Rainforest Alliance prove very counterproductive. Those families with lots of kids who don't care about the environment and don't care about health and want fruit, flavors, taste, formats, when they read that Lipton iced tea now has AOX, and it has this beautiful partnership with the Rainforest Alliance, and by the way, Lipton is asking consumers to pay 30-40% more than private label. Well, guess what? They have all the reasons they want to go to private label. And they told us the brand has disappeared from TV. They didn't even notice those new TV ads. Those innovations, they're not meaningful. And private label tastes as good, and they have all those fun flavors. It was a disaster. So what we did, honestly, was very simple. So Pepsi formed a JV with Lipton in Europe. And for a soft drink guy, our analysis was very simple. It was that they did everything that you shouldn't do when you manage soft drink brands. So what we've done was to reverse it. We have increased back the sweetness level. We went back to the formula, the legendary Lipton iced tea formula from 1998. That when you speak to people in R&D, they tell you, "Oh my God, the formula from 1998 was so good." So we went back to that formula. Instead of adding sugar, we added stevia, so it was a bit more natural. We changed the packs. We went back to some bright colors packs with less tea leaves and TQs. We removed the antioxidant claim. We created a lot of fun fruit flavor innovations: red fruit, exotic, mango, pomegranate. We did format innovation: large formats, small formats, multi-packs. We invested a lot of money in branded coolers out of home, in cafes, in bars, in restaurants, in beach bars. And we went back to the roots of the brand, which is a fun, yellow, shiny, sunny brand. And we created a celebrity-based advertising. I had hired at the time Hugh Jackman, which is a US actor, to do an ad for us on Lipton iced tea. Again, not talking about health and spa, but really uplifting. I think we can play the video now. And you can see it.
Enjoy the natural effect of tea. Tea. Drink positive.
Yeah, so you see, no rocket science, a happy advertising with a celebrity that doesn't bore consumers with, it was 108 versus what the Unilever strategy was. It has been so successful, had a really V market share when came back, double-digit markets. See now, largest soap in Europe. So very big success. Applying all those levers, diligently fight, which are not rocket science, but you can do it if you're methodical and you know the price. So that's it. That's the end of my presentation. I'll be more than happy if you have questions to answer them. Oh, thank you to all. It was great to be able. Ignacio.
Was here. Then Vladimir has a question.
Thank you.
With Francois. I think it was very. Oh, you have a question from Vladimir.
Oh, okay. So
you actually know doing
very simply, in fact, I mean, first hit that the performance was bad. The previous team was looking at the performance, 1 year to 1 year. What we did was to look at the entire 2 or 3 years, and we realized, oh my God, we have lost so much shares. so much share and, and so many users. So first was to acknowledge. Two was to look at where those users that we had lost, where had they gone? They had gone to private label, they had gone to Coke. Then we analyzed the targets of the Lipton iced tea. We realized that that target was not going to like that new positioning. They were going to be like rejecting that health and wellness thing. We also talked to them and they told us, the brand, as I told you, the brand has disappeared. I'm now buying private label because you taste less good than you used to, you don't innovate, you are expensive, and you confuse me with all those claims about antioxidants, which I don't care about. So we decided to boldly reverse it. The hard part was to convince our partners, Unilever, to throw away their beautiful looking on paper health and wellness strategy. We said, what, it doesn't work. You are just mistaken about the targets. That was the hard part. Then about all the levers, packaging, advertising, formula, pack formats, investing in coolers, it was, honestly, once you know what the issue is, you can roll out and play on all these levers, and then you see the impact on the private label is immediate. Like they immediately receded back, and Lipton iced tea went on a fabulous growth trajectory. Antonio is typing something. Yes, so consumers, we did two things. We looked at consumer panels. First, to identify who are those consumers. So we looked at those three targets. Who are the loyal, who are the switchers, who are the consumers that are leaving our brand, and you can drill with the proper analytical tools with the consumer panels. If you ask, most marketers don't ask those questions, but you can ask your panel provider, okay, this is my target, the people who switch between private label and Lipton, or that have no longer bought Lipton but bought only private label now. I want to know everything about them. And you ask thousands of questions, and it's in the database, so it's a simple, it takes 2 days, So, so you get that quantitatively, and then you organize a few focus groups where you test your hypothesis. You say, hey, what's wrong with the Lipton iced tea brand? Why are you no longer buying it? What's so great about private label? What do you like when you buy iced tea? Who is drinking it in your home? And honestly, it takes 3 groups, and you understand what's wrong. It was honestly what Unilever did on Lipton. It's surprising for such a big brand. Was a beginner's mistake. But many brands do that, because they are victim of corporate propaganda around health, around the environment, around things, and they don't think hard enough, and they don't do the homework of going deep into the targets, into drilling down, into breaking down the target in subgroups. They look at averages, they use bad metaphors, and then they devise strategies that are not rooted on analytics, if you want. All right. So, any last question, and then I guess we'll end the session, unless you have any more. Okay.
Any?
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. And Francois? No, I don't believe so. Francois, I have only one word for you. This is priceless, really, and because this is the kind of thing. This is great.
Sure.
Insightful things you cannot find in textbooks or in cases. Sure. Okay, so we really appreciate your time, your generosity. Okay, for sharing such an amazing experience with I think we've all big thanks. on behalf of on behalf of all the class.
All right.
Only 3 people were able.
Bye-bye.
It's going to be recorded. Okay, so all the class will definitely benefit from. So thanks again, okay, and thank you for those of you attending. Thank you, Vladimir. Thanks, Antonio. Thank you, Kim, and thank you, of course, Irene, and the rest of the team. Okay, thank you very much.